The gifts that we find most meaningful change as we get older, I think. I know that when I was a kid, my most magical Christmas morning was the morning that I came downstairs and Santa had brought a bunny for me, a real bunny that was going to be my own pet. And I was part of a carpool at the time from elementary school where the family that we rode with had fire belly toads, and they had to go to the pet store all the time to get live crickets for those toads. So we would stop at the pet store on the way home from school, and so I would look at those bunnies and just think they seem so soft, and I wanted one so much. And so then for Christmas morning to come down and see that I had a bunny of my very own, it was just magical. One of the most exciting Christmases of my childhood. But as you get older, obviously different gifts mean something to you. And one in particular stands out to me. It was the year that I was 22, and I was living in my parents' house between semesters at BYU. And at the time, my little sister had started a student organization at her high school. It was called the Africa Club. And they were working together on a development project for a village in Kenya. And so I was involved a little bit in it as well, and they had all these fundraising events. Many of you might have even attended the benefit concert that they put together. I helped stage manage that, and it was very exciting and going really well, but obviously all that money that we were fundraising only went to the development project itself. And so for those of us who were actually going to go to Kenya, we had to come up with that money on our own somewhere else, you know? And so at the time, I got through college mostly on scholarship money and kind of odd jobs here and there, but I didn't have a regular job at the time. So I got to the point where it was time to pay for Kenya for this trip, and I didn't have all the money that I needed. And so my parents stepped in and said that they would pay the rest so that I could go, and then I would pay them back later. And so we had an amazing time. It was such a culturally rich experience to be able to work side by side, especially with these women in the village, and they taught us how to carry water on our heads, and none of us were very good at it. And they were just so quick to celebrate and dance, and we would dance together even though we didn't always understand each other's language. It was just an amazing experience, and it created an ongoing relationship with that village. Actually, a couple of years later, I think through Meridian, some of the money was raised to be able to put a well inside their village. Before that, people had to walk miles and miles away to get water every single day. And once this well was put in, they had water right in their own village, and there was so much joy around getting this well. And they had a garden that the school could grow vegetables so that they could feed the kids at school, which they hadn't been able to do before. Anyway, so it was just a very, very positive experience, and it's a good thing I got involved with the organization, because a couple years later, I went to Nepal with that same organization, and that is where I met my husband. So, one very cute baby and one on the way owe their lives to me being introduced to this organization. But anyway, back to that year. So I got back from Kenya, and by Christmas, that was in the summer, and by Christmas, I still hadn't paid the money back for the rest of that trip. And so Christmas morning, we were sitting around and we had finished opening the presents that had wrapping paper on them. And then my parents said, "Oh, there's one more gift for you. It's on the tree there." And there on the tree was this piece of paper that was rolled up like a scroll and tied with a red ribbon. And so I pulled it down and I looked inside, and it said, "Your debt is forgiven. You don't owe us anything for Kenya anymore." And I didn't even realize, I don't think, how much this debt had been hanging over me. Reading those words gave me such an immediate rush of relief, and I didn't realize how much that had been a burden in the background until the burden was lifted. And it was a gift I'll never forget, not only because it meant something to me to not have to worry about that debt anymore, but because that rush of relief that I felt is such a visceral, memorable thing to hark back to when I think about the atonement. And when I think about the fact that we all have burdens in the background, a lot of us might not even realize that we are walking around held back and held down by the feeling that we are falling so far short, and that we have these burdens just in the background. And yet the atonement is there waiting for us to accept it, and just like that, the debt can be forgiven if we turn to the Lord. And that's such a significant lesson to remember this time of year, because I think when we well up with tears this time of year, say you're listening to Oh Holy Night and you hear the lyrics about the chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and you see yourself as both the person I know I said I didn't get emotional, apparently it's not all the way true, but you see yourself as the brother of that person in chains, but you see yourself as the person in chains as well, because all of us are just held back in this life by the ways that we can't do it all. And yet we well up with tears this time of year, not only because of our gratitude for the birth of the Savior, but because that gratitude for that birth is really gratitude for his life, and gratitude for that atonement that he was willing to come down and do on behalf of all of us. And that's something that is just an amazing gift, an incomparable gift that we all have given to us freely, that our debt can just be forgiven if we turn to the Lord. And so I hope that you remember that gift as you're celebrating your Christmas morning and surrounded by other wonderful, thoughtful gifts from family and friends. Remember that gift, and remember that you don't have to carry those burdens in the background. You can turn to him and have them completely taken away. And I hope you all have a Merry Christmas.